Hello, I am Igor Kuznetsov, director of Kaspersky GReAT. I suppose it was plain and simple. I got infected with a computer virus. It's worth noting that this happened a couple of years before I decided I wanted to work for Kaspersky. As far as I remember, it was 1998. I bought a disk. It contained a Delphi development environment. I was already interested in programming at the time, so naturally I wanted to start coding. The bootloader on that disk turned out to be infected with the Chernobyl virus, also known as CINH. Having discovered this for myself, it piqued my curiosity. What exactly are computer viruses? Back then, electronic magazines, e-zines, were popular, where people from the anti-malware industry would write, among other things, about building antivirus tools and reverse engineering viruses. Essentially, what people now post as tutorials on YouTube used to be published online, written by enthusiasts. So gradually I got interested and even started writing something like an antivirus myself. By the time I joined the company, I already had a little experience. No, in fact, I didn't even reach the date when the BIOS gets wiped, so I just disinfected the system. It's a success story. GReAT was formed in 2008. By that time, Kaspersky had a virus lab, and the volume of incoming malicious samples had become overwhelming. It was clear that analyzing them all manually was impossible. We already had bots for that. At the same time, we had experts working in various countries around the world who could analyze complicated attacks. We realized that we needed to create an elite unit dedicated to researching the most sophisticated attacks, enhancing our detection technologies, and sharing our findings with the world. I believe it all really got going with Stuxnet. In 2010, cybersecurity researchers discovered what was later dubbed a cyber weapon. This term was coined in connection with Stuxnet. It was a piece of malware that wasn't your typical virus, Trojan, or worm. Its purpose was far more complex and serious. It was the first known case of cyber sabotage. That is, a program designed to infect computers in order to affect the physical world and cause actual destruction. This is publicly known information, which can be obtained from open sources. As far as the global community understands it, Stuxnet was created to destroy uranium enrichment centrifuges at the Natanz enrichment facility in Iran. The malware targeted the controllers that ran the centrifuges, causing them to spin in conditions that physically destroyed them. The biggest challenges in our work are usually technical in nature, as we constantly face increasingly complex, sophisticated, and intricate attacks. And the adversaries we're essentially up against, the threat actors who create this malware, who are behind these sophisticated campaigns, they know exactly who we are. They actively counter our efforts. They develop new techniques to prevent us from obtaining their malware samples or analyzing them. And they also attempt to evade our products. Our job is to make sure that doesn't happen. Above all, it's about the people, Our experts, the members of the GReAT team, the expertise they bring is truly unique, built up over decades, and it's irreplaceable. People who have seen the entire evolution of advanced malware are much better equipped to understand what they're dealing with and how to handle it. As a result, the combination of having such people and having the best technologies in our products creates a synergy that allows us to counter even the most exceptional attacks. And that's precisely our area of specialization. Arguably, the most complex case we've encountered over the years was Operation Triangulation, which we publicly disclosed on June 1st, 2023. This was an attack targeting the iPhones and iPads of our own company's employees. It's remarkable that the attackers decided to attack us, considering they had to be fully aware of who they were dealing with. But the attack was truly unique. It employed an entire chain of zero-day exploits, targeting unfixed vulnerabilities in Apple's software and hardware. All the devices had the latest updates installed, yet they were completely vulnerable. The complexity of the attack, the number of different components involved, and the encryption of every element, all designed to prevent us from retrieving the payloads, made us work really hard. The entire team had to work long nights and weekends. And not just us in GReAT. We worked together with colleagues from other departments. It was a full-fledged cross-team collaboration between us and our corporate information security department's experts, who, by the way, were the ones who originally discovered components of this attack. Together, we were able to fully analyze it. As a result, we're currently the only company in the world to have successfully reconstructed the entire attack chain on Apple devices, from the very beginning to the end. By the way, fortunately or unfortunately, I didn't get to reverse engineer Operation Triangulation in full myself. I started researching it, but because of my managerial responsibilities, I no longer have the bandwidth to dedicate myself entirely to reverse engineering such threats. Of course, and that brings me to the second story I'll gladly share. Just a couple of weeks ago, we informed the world about a new zero-day that we've discovered in yet another highly complex targeted attack on organizations in Russia. This attack also involved a chain of zero days, and we've fully analyzed one of its components and are reporting it to the public. A vulnerability in the Chrome browser allowed attackers to completely bypass all protection mechanisms, including the so-called sandbox, and essentially gain full control of the system once code execution was achieved on the compromised device. This kind of bypass is extremely rare. We had never seen sandbox escape achieved through a logic flaw in an application. Typically, vulnerabilities are more technical in nature, such as buffer overruns or improper data validation. But in this case, a programming error enabled the attackers to bypass all protections at once. That's a very good and complicated question. In fact, one that's never easy to answer. Part of our expertise lies in knowing how to provide proper answers to those tricky questions from the media. You never know with absolute certainty who's behind an attack, and those who claim they do know usually have some agenda. Often this is political, involving propaganda or the promotion of certain narratives, something we never engage in. Officially, as a company, we never attribute attacks to any specific country, entity, or organization, because we're well aware that this simply can't be done with complete certainty. The only credible attribution can come from law enforcement agencies. What we do is identify threat actors. These are abstract entities that help security researchers define who the attackers are, what their objectives might be, such as espionage or cybercrime, which countries they tend to target, whether their victims are in specific regions or all over the world, and what tools, techniques, and procedures they use. We also use techniques to cluster these attacks, including proprietary technologies built into our products, technologies for which Kaspersky GReAT experts have been granted patents. GReAT is a good example. As a company, we've been working with Interpol for over a decade, helping the organization tackle real cybercrime. Last year, there was a particularly high-profile case. The GReAT group, which has been active for more than 10 years, has been developing banking Trojans to steal users' financial information and drain their accounts. The group was taken down in part thanks to the intelligence we shared about the attack. Several arrests in Brazil were made with our direct assistance. We collaborate with many international organizations. First and foremost, Interpol, Afripol, and local law enforcement agencies, the latter being the responsibility of our local teams. GReAT is present in more than 20 countries across all continents, including Latin America, Europe, Russia, the Middle East, Asia, and even Australia. Our primary offering and a key contribution to the company's portfolio is threat intelligence. This comprises reports on the current threat landscape and the most relevant active threats. This offering is essentially a commercial product. In addition to this, the results of our research are integrated into and enhance many other products, especially EDR solutions. These results include dedicated data feeds that we make available to customers. Our clients can integrate them directly into their own security solutions to block attacks. They also include detection techniques derived from our researches, which are incorporated into all our security solutions. The goal for this decade is to become the most recognized and most successful expert team in the entire industry. GReAT predicts that AI, which is already ubiquitous, will be used in virtually every attack. We're already seeing cybercriminals using deepfakes to socially engineer users, convincing them to open emails, launch malicious files, or even respond to phone calls. And attackers are also programmers, so they'll increasingly use AI to write malicious code. We're convinced that we'll soon see Operation Triangulation level attacks on Android. Ever since we disclosed triangulation, people have been asking us, so which is more secure, Android or iOS? And we always respond that, in reality, their security is at about the same level. We know very well that an attack can be created for virtually any platform unless it's specifically a cyber-immune platform. It all comes down to resources, money, and people. This means that Android will eventually be compromised as well. Naturally, we'd love to be the first to discover such an attack, and we're actively working to identify potentially dangerous components. Hopefully, you will be able to read about new findings soon. That's a very good question, and as experts, we fully understand that security and protection are, first and foremost, factors that affect the cost of an attack. No matter how sophisticated or secure a device is, one can always try and find a vulnerability that can be exploited to hack it if one tries hard enough. That's why the Defender's task, and for instance, what we're doing with Kaspersky OS, is to design a system whose cost of compromise would be sky-high. Anyone who considers attacking it would simply be deterred because the attack would cost more than it could possibly be worth. So yes, technically, anything can be hacked, as long as it's powered on. But if breaking into it is prohibitively expensive, no one will bother. We've already done some soldering. For example, we've discovered vulnerabilities in ATMs by directly analyzing their electrical circuits and connecting to the relevant wires. So we're already past that stage. What we really want always, and it's not easy considering we're already finding insanely complex, interesting, and relevant attacks, is to discover something even more significant, more complex, and more fascinating. And we're managing to do just that. We're confident we'll continue to succeed because we're putting our all into it. Arguably, the most common initial access vector for corporate environments today is compromised credentials, either stolen or brute forced. The message here is clear. Follow all basic cyber hygiene practices, use strong passwords, or better yet, abandon passwords altogether and adopt more advanced authorization factors. Another major trend is supply chain compromise. We divide supply chain attacks into two main categories. One has to do with attacking a trusted partner or system integrator who may have weaker security than the target company and can be used as a stepping stone into the corporate perimeter. The other involves tampering with source code, such as open source projects that may contain backdoors, either intentional or accidental, or compromising software vendors in order to use them as an access point to their customers. Of course not. First, let's start with the basics. The term antivirus is outdated. What we have today are advanced security solutions. Antivirus is something from 15 years ago. Today, it's all about multifunctional platforms that protect our entire digital lives. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, we're not robots yet, and we haven't figured out how to bring that protection into the physical world. I love cyberpunk, but that future hasn't yet arrived. Sadly, no. Nearly every attack chain has been revealed through painstaking and meticulous work. Occasionally, we've been lucky with text artifacts, such as discovering the language the attackers speak by finding plain text paths to their sources within the malware. Such finds are a pleasant surprise. But apart from that, it's a slow, complicated, and labor-intensive process. It's satisfying, but there are no easy wins. That's already part of our lore. When we were moving into this office, everyone wondered how we should decorate the anti-malware lab. We decided to cover it in code. At the time, a Trojan called Zeus, designed to steal banking credentials, was very popular. It has become something of a legend by now. Perhaps everyone was so fed up with it that they wanted it immortalized. Or maybe it was too iconic to be forgotten. Either way, Zeus now decorates our lab. I don't have a favorite virus. I dislike them all. I guess one of the most fascinating was Equation, what we call the Death Star of all APT attacks. It was by far the most complex APT group we had ever encountered, and it still is. There were other APTs that I personally worked on, such as Regan, which is closely related to Equation but attributed to a different group, and is insanely complex. I was lucky enough to extract components directly from infected machines, study them, reverse engineer them, and even retrieve a unique zero-day that allowed a driver to be loaded from the registry, essentially out of thin air. Microsoft refused to fix the flaw, stating that since admin rights were required to trigger it, it wasn't really a vulnerability. Of course not. And we would never hire anyone who has ever even dabbled in writing malware, and certainly not those who boast about it. Such people are blacklisted at once. It's not easy, partly because job openings don't come up very often. We've just hired someone in Russia, but we currently have a position open in the Middle East. The most important requirement is experience. We need experts with a strong background in analyzing attacks, conducting malware research. It's also beneficial to have experience in areas like incident response and forensic work, perhaps analyzing hard drives. While not mandatory, that kind of experience is always a plus. And above all, you've got to have curiosity. You can simply analyze a program, or you can dig deeper to get to the bottom of it, break it down, look at it from every angle, and try to figure out, what was this thing? You also need to look back. Maybe something similar was encountered 5 or 10 years ago. It's fascinating, and it takes an awful lot of time. But once you gain access to that kind of information, you start seeing a very curious picture of what's happening in the world. And once you're in, it's impossible to walk away. I think it's a very unique role that I wouldn't really want to compare to anything else. But if I had to, a detective.